There's 4 words in my company and in my career that people will bring them to their knees, and that is, I have an idea. I get the temptation to move fast and to try things, and it's okay to do experiments. Experiments are really good. Fast-fail experiments are important, but I just want to remind you, if the upstream is wrong, the downstream is polluted. So all the things you're going to spend your money on and do, so you want to make sure you get that foundation right. Clarity around those kinds of questions and the discipline to get the answers at the start will allow you to scale later and be more agile now and make better decisions.
Welcome back to another episode of the Critical Hit, the podcast where we explore the crossroads of marketing strategy and the human connection. I'm your host, Behtash, and I'm here today diving deep into one of my favorite topics, marketing accountability and customer centricity, with someone who has literally written the playbook on it. My guest is Laura Patterson, president of VisionEdge Marketing, author of Fast Track Your Business, and a pioneer in connecting marketing performance to measurable business outcomes. From her early days building customer segmentation models at State Farm to developing her patented excellence methodology, Laura has helped countless organizations align their strategies around one simple but powerful truth: customer value drives business value. We're talking about frameworks, dashboards, upstream versus downstream marketing, and how AI is changing the game without replacing the human element of empathy and intuition. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's jump into this insightful conversation with our guest, Laura Patterson. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Laura. I appreciate your time.
I am really honored to have the opportunity to be a part of your program. Thank you very much, Behtash.
Nice. Very exciting. So I want to start by looking at the history a little bit. So, you built your career and around making marketing more accountable. So when we were looking at the past, what was your first marketing job? What was the experience that kind of shaped your principles of today?
Well, if we don't count those jobs you have, like selling lemonade or shoveling snow, but let's not count those jobs you have as a child that you need to market in order to make money and sell. My first professional marketing job was with a company that people are probably familiar with, State Farm. It's an insurance company. And I had the most wonderful boss, Dwight. I even have a little blog post about Dwight on our site. What he brought me in to do was to help him create a customer segmentation model to support customer retention and share of wallet growth. Now, we're talking about a time when customer data was kept in manila folders, and there were just hundreds and hundreds of manila folders in the back room, a big closet. So that was a very different era working with data because my background is in data. And that experience really taught me what I would call an essential truth. Not all customers are equal. Because as I went through all of this information in these folders, and after you go through a few hundred of them, you start to get a pretty good sense of the model. You can see that there are definitely differences among customers. So one of the things that we tried to do in building this model was to understand customer behaviors and their needs and the potential value of each segment. So we would have, and our segments were kind of interesting. We used those little sticky notes and we put them on the end of the manila folders to have for different kinds of segments. So we'd have the theater segment, and this will be important later, and then the baseball segment, because I'm from St. Louis, and St. Louis is a baseball town. Whatever those things were, we had these segments, and it's because what we wanted to do was enable Dwight to have more meaningful engagement with his customers. And by understanding things like what they enjoyed doing, he could engage with them around that. And we did fun things with every segment. So this is where I really first learned to connect marketing accountability to a measurable business outcome, like retention, like share of wallet. And it's a principle that's pretty much guided me ever since.
That's wonderful. And you said manila folders. I remember even my experience with those. You had to pass them around for each project, one to another, to the copy, to the designer. And it was such a huge mess. But what I appreciated about those manila folders was through that you would get, I feel like there was a sense of tangible connection to the information that you were receiving. Whereas in a digital model, there is that sort of connection. You get more aggregated data, you can do more analysis, but you have to almost search for the information. Whereas sometimes getting those manila folders or going through them one by one, you would get more connection to each one of those individuals within a segment.
I mean, they're all, there's nice things to be said for CRM systems where you can keep a lot of information about a customer and you can upload and everything is, searchable and all that. Yeah, and the beauty of that is we can be more efficient. So there's a lot of real value to what we have today at our fingertips. Starting out, that was just the way it was. The world was different. The only kind of computer we had was a big box that blinked at you that was tied to some mainframe in a whole nother place.
Wonderful times. So what's the recent experience with your own customers or within an industry that quite shocked you when it comes to customer centricity?
Well, what shocks me is how often companies we work with, because we work in the B2B space, and our customers have very complex, sophisticated products that often take a consultative sell, and there are usually multiple people engaged in the buying process and in the selling process, right, in that whole experience. And in companies like that, people can become very enamored with their product. They can become very sales-oriented, right? So for us, one of the surprises is that in the famous words of Peter Drucker, the purpose of a company, of a business, is to create a customer, and they can lose sight of the customer in how they are engaging in their marketplace. So just had a conversation just today on what it takes to map the customer buying journey and what those stages are and how to really tie them to customer behaviors, and really to create what we call intent scores. So it's something that I'm glad that they still need our help to do that. But you would think by now people would understand that that's what they need to be doing.
You've spent decades championing customer centricity before it was fashionable. What originally, if you want to take it back through time, convinced you that this is the most important? Or there is an old saying, customers don't buy products, but they purchase through experience and emotion, right? But how is this smart economics putting customer in the center of everything?
Okay, so I like this question because it helps us be able to talk about what is customer centricity. So customer centricity shows up in how you make decisions and what you measure. It's really the most efficient path to growth. And today, companies have a lot of data. They are inundated with dashboards. And what they really need to do is have alignment. And that alignment is around one way to improve alignment is around your customers. So when your strategy begins with your customer, you can reduce waste, you can improve retention, you can identify where value is being truly created. It's not only good ethics, it's really good economics, because companies that want to grow, especially those that want to grow organically, they do that by aligning their organization around delivering and measuring customer value. Customer value, that's what creates business value. And business value is what creates shareholder value.
Absolutely. And I got a chance to pick up your book, Fast Track Your Business. I apologize. I had too much coffee and my brain started malfunctioning for a second. If you could, my first question is, by the way, amazing book, and I recommend everybody to pick it up, and a great read. If you could go back to when you wanted to first start this book, what's the one thing you wish someone had told you about publishing or sharing this knowledge and framework?
So Fast Track is my fourth book and was never an intended book to be written. I had written 3 books and I had thought that I was done. And the circle of traction, which is what we wrote about in Fast Track, which I know we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. And by the way, thank you for reading the book and thank you for talking about the book. It is the result of customers, particularly who were familiar with the framework and kept asking me if I would ever put that framework in a book. And I really didn't have intentions of doing that. And one of those customers said to me, I hope that you'll rethink that. I hope you'll reconsider that. So obviously I did, because I did write Fast Track. And it is about a framework. And, frameworks kind of take on a life of their own. And I didn't realize that at the time. So people take your framework, they adapt it, they evolve it, they make it their own. And that's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing, because it means that they're finding the idea useful and it's helping them achieve their results. It's just, it's interesting to see how people will take it and modify it. And I'm like, okay, if that works for you.
I apologize. In the book Fast Track, when you're talking about the circle of traction, how would you introduce that circle of traction to the folks that are listening to this episode? And also, how would this framework help translate customer insights to measurable actions?
Okay, so the circle of attraction is a really practical framework that we developed that is focused specifically on organic growth. I do think, though, it has applications to those people going through A. But what this book is intended to do is have you think outside in. So instead of thinking inside out, from the inside, how you run your company, and all you do need to think about that. It's really about starting with the customer first. So it's it's a wheel, and a wheel has an axle, and this circle of traction has 4 major components in the axle. So culture and structure and people skills, infrastructure and process, and data and analytics. So you have to have those things in place in order to make the wheel turn. And that's where you have to be, really have alignment around those things, and then the organization can move forward. So you have to take the insights that you gain by understanding your customers and asking really good questions. That's the key about data. Rather than looking at your data and trying to figure out what it tells you, think about the questions that you need to have answered so you can get insights about your customers to inform your strategies, your metrics, and your execution so you can create traction. I think that's a really different way of looking at it. What are the things we need to understand about our customers and the problems they have, the aspirations they have, the solutions they're looking for, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, whatever those questions might be. So, for example, one of our customers came to realize that their highest value customers weren't those with the biggest deals, but those actually with the longest retention and the strongest referral rates. So they started thinking very differently, as you would imagine. So instead of just thinking, oh, about this one big deal or the ones with the biggest deals, they started thinking differently. And that insight shifted their investment priorities, right? They started thinking differently about which customers to retain, because those that were continuing to be a long-term customer had more lifetime value, and those that also had the stronger referral rates also had more lifetime value. So over the long run, they were a better investment. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. How would you, because you brought in a very interesting point, you were talking about thinking outward, inward. How does that reflect in the company's culture? Because I had a very interesting conversation with the photographer of the German president a couple of days ago, and he is also in our field of marketing, and he was talking about creating a culture that represents how you treat the customer. So when we're essentially looking at the organizational culture, how does that have to align to make that reflection possible?
So in order to have a customer-centric organization, you do have to have a culture that is customer-centric. And you have to encourage and empower the people that work for you to do the right things for customers. Now, I want people to understand that customer centricity is not about catering to every customer's every whim. That is not what it means. It means how you make decisions and how you empower your employees to make decisions that are in the best interest of the company, because it's in the best interest of the customer. So I have a story I tell that kind of explains this empowerment. If we have a couple of minutes, Behtash, I
Of
can
course.
share it with you. Okay.
Please do.
So you might have heard a few years ago in Austin, we had this thing called the Snowmageddon. I don't know if you heard about it, but it was a big deal. It was in the weather. And basically our city we were expecting a really bad storm, and people were trying to get prepared for the storm. And that meant going to the grocery store and getting all the things that you need for food and whatnot. And my husband always says, if it weren't for the last minute, because when it comes to those kinds of things, I'm kind of at the last minute. So we're heading out to our HEB. HEB is a regional Texas grocery chain. They are remarkable. And this story kind of shows you why they're remarkable. And we're in the grocery store with our baskets, along with a lot of other people who apparently were at the last minute going up and down the aisles, getting water and batteries and candles and matches and, protein bars. Like we're really going to be out for weeks. Obviously, we weren't out for weeks, but we were actually out for quite a number of days. Anyway, we're going up and down the aisles, and there are quite a few of us when the power goes out. The storm has arrived. Okay. So the power goes out and the generator comes on. You know how they have those eerie lights when a generator comes on, and the PA doesn't work. So you hear this voice coming to you wherever you are. And he says, "Hello, I'm so-and-so, and I'm the store manager. And we have, as you can see, lost power. And what I would like you to do is stop where you are, and I'll please bring your baskets to the front of the store." So, we're all in hushed tones. Like, it's really strange what happens in situations like that, right? He's talking, Mark and I are talking, in hushed tones, I don't know, but for whatever reason, we're bringing our cart and all the other people are bringing their carts to the front of the store. And he says, we really appreciate your business. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to manually open the doors because they ran on power. And what we would like you to do is take your baskets as they are. We can't provide bags. We can't check you out. We can't do anything. And take them to your cars and drive safely home. And we look forward to seeing you when the storm is over. That's what he did, right? He felt empowered to make that decision on behalf of all the customers. He could have told us just to leave and not take our stuff. So hundreds of dollars went out the door that day, right? But think about the amount of goodwill he created among that community. And I'm telling the story. I'm sure I'm not the only one telling the story. So that is an example of a customer-centric culture. I hope that brings the idea to life. He knew he needed to make a decision, and he needed to make it in that moment. And because the company is customer-centric and they have trained their people on what that means, he felt he could make that decision and not worry about any repercussions. Does that help bring it to life?
Yeah. Very powerful story and really put things in perspective. I think I was actually there a week before the storm started. And at the time, I didn't know. So I got back home to California, and then I heard it on the news. And then, yeah, it was, I'm glad everything was okay. But very powerful story for sure.
Yeah, and there are all kinds of examples like that. I'm sure, and as I'm telling this story, other people can think of those kinds of experiences they have. Here's the question. Do your people feel like they could create that story in an instance where they would need to do it? Do they feel that they could do that? That will tell you a lot about your culture.
That's a very check mark. We should add that to every corporation's audit moving forward. Answer that question at least once a year. Tell us about excellence. You patented the methodology that maps marketing activities directly to outcomes. How does the system ensure that the activities are reflecting the customer value and not just KPIs or internal KPIs that only managers care about?
Yeah, thank you. Excellence. We created excellence and got a patent for excellence because there wasn't anything out there that we could use. We tried PowerPoint and Excel and Word and all the other things that existed at the time. Now there are maybe some other kinds of tools, but there wasn't anything that is like excellence, and there still isn't today. And so what excellence is an ability to create a plan. And that plan could be marketing, it could be sales, it could be a product plan, it could be a strategic plan, but it begins with the outcomes in mind. And those outcomes are customer-centric in nature. So you frame your outcome around what you're trying to produce in terms of customers. So for example, let's just talk about what might be a business outcome. So that outcomes are business outcomes. It might be, for example, acquire X number of net new customers in ABC segment that will purchase X, Y widget for this amount of money in this time frame, resulting in this amount of revenue, right? It's very clear who the customers are, what segment they're in, what they're going to buy, how much they're going to pay, when they're going to do it, right? That is an outcome. If the company achieves that, they'll be able to declare success. Now the question becomes, now that we know what that is, because now we have a KPI, or maybe several, that we will be able to use. And that KPI is going to be around customer acquisition rate and maybe customer acquisition cost, potentially. Now the question becomes, what does marketing need to do to contribute to that outcome? And that becomes the marketing objective. Sales might be, what does sales need to do to contribute to that outcome? Product, what does the product organization need to do to contribute to that outcome? Whatever the organization is, how you set it up. Those become your objectives. And then underneath your objectives will be the strategy, the programs, the tactics, and the activities, and they all line up. And as a result of this chain, what we call a logic chain and a metrics chain, as a result, you have a consistent chain of every plan tied to the same set of business outcomes. So everyone's working against the same customer KPIs. They may have different measures. So the marketing plan might be, the objective for that might be X number of, maybe it's demos that convert, or X number of appointments that convert to something, right? That might be the marketing objective, and then what will be the strategy to do that? The sales will have something else, and product may have something else. So that is by connecting the objectives, the strategies, and the measures all the way up to the outcome, every part of the organization can see exactly how their work contributes to the customer value and growth. Exactly, because it's all right there. So excellence creates that blueprint, and it helps us frame up a dashboard, and it serves as a wonderful way to create alignment and accountability and really minimize random acts, which stall growth. Because now when someone has an idea for an activity or a tactic, the question becomes, where on the chain does that fit? Where will that fall in our chain, and how will it make a difference or impact the outcome differently? And if the answer is it's not really going to, or we don't really see that adding the same value as this other thing because we all only have so much time and money, what would that replace? Will it do a better job than what we're planning to do? Now you can ask those kinds of questions, intelligent questions that you might not have normally asked when an idea is presented.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. When we are looking at, this is potentially a good segue to also talk about the, dashboards. Many of the marketing dashboards look for clicks and conversions. Even when we are looking at CX, they might be looking at few standard KPIs. But when we're looking at customer centricity, what metric should the team start tracking now that, is it perfect checks and balances, or is it perfect benchmark for success for customer centricity? And my follow-up question potentially is this something that is going to be easy for small teams to be able to track, or does it need to have a massive infrastructure to support it?
Okay, so first of all, I just want a little plug for, if there's a white paper on the VisionEdgeMarketing.com website. I think it's called Bring Your A Game or something like that. And I can get it for you, Behtash, if you want. And it actually helps you see and understand what kinds of measures and metrics you may want to have as a customer-centric organization. But the focus of customer-centric measures is value creation, not volume. So things like retention rate, share of wallet, customer lifetime value, customer effort, referral rate, those would be examples of customer-oriented measures and metrics. Even small teams can use some of those. For example, referral rate. That's something most companies can, of any size, or retention rate, or customer acquisition rate. Those are things that most companies can. And another one is customer effort, right? So how hard or easy? We have a very simple blog post on how you can begin to create, anybody can create a customer effort score and why you would want to do that. So I think that the most important thing to remember is the difference between a dashboard and a scorecard. A lot of organizations have CRM systems or other tools, and they get data. And usually that data is a scorecard, not a dashboard or a performance management dashboard. So I want to kind of, if we have time, distinguish between the two. Would that be helpful?
Of course. Yeah, please do.
Okay. So a common metaphor I use is golf, because a lot of people understand the game of golf. And even if they don't play it on a regular basis, they've played putt-putt golf. And we also have, I think, articles on attribution or scorecards versus dashboards on the website, so they can look at, and this metaphor is out there. So when you go to play a round of golf, do you play golf, Behtash?
The putt-putt, as you mentioned, not the...
Okay. So when you go, okay, even when you go to play putt-putt, but when you go to play a round of golf, they give you this scorecard. The scorecard gives you information about each hole. It tells you what the par is, what the slope is, distances, things like that. And you go and play your round of golf, and you are tracking only what your par is for that hole. Like, so, were you par, were you above par, were you below, whatever the number of strokes are for that hole. And when you get to the end, if it's a traditional course, it's usually par is 72, and you are looking at your score compared to the course score or target par. And then, if you're playing with your buddies, your whatnot, you can see how you compete, right? That is a scorecard. You don't know why you got that score. You just know what your score is, and you know how you performed by hole, but you don't know why. A performance management dashboard helps you understand the why. So, for example, using golf, was your score a result of the fact that your drives are too short and it takes you can't get to greens in regulation? Is it the fact that you spend a lot of time in traps or out of bounds versus in the fairways? Is it because you have, your short game, you have just too many strokes, putts per hole, right? So those would be giving you insight into why. And you can see that's very different kinds of measures than what you would see on a scorecard, which is how many strokes you got. So clicks and other things like that would be scorecard. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to cut you off. Please do send me the articles on your website, because I do want to add those links to the bottom of this episode. It's going to be very helpful for our listeners to learn about that as well.
Okay, so I owe you two things. The white paper, which is free but gated, they'll have to fill some information out, and the scorecard versus dashboards, which is free and not gated. So I will send those both to you.
Fantastic. I appreciate it. With the it's an age of AI, so we can't go one episode without talking about AI. So if we are talking about AI, automation, personalization, what steps should businesses take to keep that authenticity or authentic customer centricity and not lose touch of it in the era of AI?
Yeah, we are certainly in the era of AI, and we're only at the beginning of it, I suspect. Even though ChatGPT, well, AI has been around a very long time. So let's separate that. AI being in the data world, we've been using artificial intelligence, machine learning, doing modeling for a very long time. That part's not new. What is new and exciting is this generative AI, ChatGPT, and now all the things that come with that, whether that's Gemini or Perplexity or Claude or Jasper, and the list goes on. It's a massive list. I think I was on ChatGPT within 3 days of its being announced. So I have a passion for trying out new things and doing new experiments. And, you could spend your entire day on ChatGPT if you weren't careful. The thing to remember about generative AI is that it's an amplifier. It can help us do things a lot faster. It can help us see patterns and use those patterns to give us insights into what might likely happen next, right? So it can see trends, it can see patterns. If you're not careful, you can maybe see some things that are not relevant, because it just looks for all kinds of interesting things. So you want to be sure that you know how to ask the right questions, again, so that you can get the answers that you need to make the decisions that you need to make. Because that's the key point for all of us, is what is the decision I need to make? What do I need to know to make that decision? Of what I need to know, what do I already know? And what is it that I don't know, right? That this data can help me find out. So that's sort of important when you're working with generative AI. But the one thing about AI is it can't replace human empathy and intuition. And so the key is to let the data inform what our understanding, without letting it dictate what we're going to do, because those are the decisions we need to make as human beings. So we can use AI to gain insight, to get a perspective, but then we need to apply judgment, which is the human part, to make the customer decision so that we're being both smart and human.
If we are going to look at fast track your business or in general, besides all the valuable information that you already provided, is there that one thing that you want the listeners to take away from what you're teaching?
Yes, there is. Our company name is VisionEdge Marketing. And when I tell people what we do, inevitably someone in one of those roundtables is, I don't understand why marketing is in your name. You don't do any marketing. And the reason marketing is in our name is that we believe that upstream marketing is where growth starts. And upstream marketing is customer insight, strategy, and alignment. Downstream marketing is where we do campaigns and technology. We may not do a lot in terms of the downstream because we spend all of our time in the upstream. But when you put your customer at the center from the start, you can accelerate growth and you can avoid those random acts that are going to waste your time and resources. And the thing that's really important to remember is if we don't get the upstream right, you won't get the downstream right.
And it's a very great segment to segue to what I'm going to ask next. I often feel that before I ask the question, I do agree with you. And I think that often, at least I feel like there is a disconnect between that upstream marketing to downstream marketing, with all the effort heavily being on the downstream marketing, if that makes sense. And so it's very valuable to start thinking about creating the foundation. As we were talking about using this marketing automation, and everybody was looking at the very end of the line, the goal. Like, how does it look like at the end of the road once everything is said and done? And I would always say, let's start thinking about learning how to walk before how we learn how to run. And the reason why I bring that up is many talk about the skyscraper as it's done without really thinking about how important it is to have that laid foundation be strong to be able to support that skyscraper. And with that, segue to startups. Many of the startups go from ideation to execution really quick, and many have a tendency, and some part of it is understandable. Even when I started the business, I was like, okay, I have this idea, and when am I renting my office? All of a sudden you just start prioritizing high level, items, or all of a sudden you're talking about marketing, you're talking about social media. But without falling into perfectionism and really taking your time and losing the opportunity, focusing on that foundation, how would the early stage founders recalibrate their priorities to build the foundation, make sure that they're creating a customer-centric organization from the beginning?
I love your skyscraper idea, Behtash. That's great. And you're right. The bigger it is, the more important the foundation is going to be, because you don't always want to have a solid foundation, but you need different kind of foundation depending on what you're building. And so I always say that when I'm talking to an entrepreneur that's just getting started, I'll say, do you have clarity around who your customer is? Who is your customer? What is the problem or you're solving for them, or the opportunity you're creating for them? How important is that to them? Do you know what the value is for what you are bringing to the table? And how you're going to know whether or not you've delivered on that value? Because you're creating a transformation with your product. You're ideally, right? People are doing something X and you are going to transform them to doing something Y. And the question is, why would they want to do Y over X? What is the problem with X, and what is the value of Y to make that change? And that change is what they're going to spend or invest in your offer, whether it's a service or a product. So having real clarity around that is really the foundation. It's fundamental. And yes, I know that being an entrepreneur, that the temptation is to move fast. I have there's 4 words in my company and in my career that people will bring them to their knees, and that is, I have an idea. I get the temptation to move fast and to try things, and it's okay to do experiments. Experiments are really good. Fast-fail experiments are important, but I just want to remind you, if the upstream is wrong, the downstream is polluted. So all the things you're going to spend your money on and do, you don't have, when you're in an early stage company, you don't have time for a restart. So you want to make sure you get that foundation right. clarity around those kinds of questions and the discipline to get the answers at the start will allow you to scale later and be more agile now and make better decisions because you'll be able to know what to say no to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your answer. And Laura, I know that we are getting towards the end of our episode. It was such an engaging conversation. I don't want to have this conversation and ever end, but I want to be respectful of your time, and with the hope that you can promise me to come back and we can continue our conversation later on in the future. But right now, towards the end, I want to pass the microphone to you to talk directly to our customers, share what's going on in your life and how they can connect with you and learn more about your business.
I would love to hear from them, and they're welcome to reach out at Laura P, as in Peter, at VisionEdgeMarketing.com or on LinkedIn. We offer advisory services for those that are in the early stage. We have tools like workbooks for people who really are just wanting to get maybe their toes in the water and not ready to jump into the deep end of a consulting engagement. So happy to speak with folks if they need some help. Our job is to serve, and we want to see people be successful and grow.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And folks, I'm going to have information on how to connect with Laura at the description, both on Spotify and YouTube. That was such an energizing and thought-provoking conversation with Laura Patterson. I loved her insights on building a customer-centric culture, aligning marketing with measurable business outcomes, and how frameworks like the Circle of Traction can drive real sustainable growth. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe to Critical Hit on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. That is KRTCL HIT. And leave a quick review to help others discover the show as well. And definitely check out Laura's work. Visit VisionEdgeMarketing.com to explore her resources, frameworks, and books like Fast Track Your Business. You'll find the links to everything discussed within the episode in the description below as well. And until next time, remember, clarity beats complexity, and every great marketing story starts with understanding your customers.